Hey y'all, it's your girl Miss Awaken again, aka Jasmine, or aka Auntie Jazz for the kids that's watching, or the kids love. Get Jazz love the kids. Now, I'm not really one to be very controversial. I don't serve two masters, but I do listen to oldies but goodies. I have a very old soul. So while this is a little bit unorthodox and different, I do want to switch things up a little bit with this particular video that I'm going to do. I'm sorry, let me finish on my introduction. This content that I cover, if it resonates with you or relates to you in any way, please share, subscribe, like, follow, or even share this with a friend if it resonates with them and it does not resonate with you. But if you want to keep up with any other content that I cover in the future, if you want to keep up with anything else that I post in the future, be sure to follow or join the tribe, okay? I might touch on your home. It might have your name on it. Now, what I want to talk about right now is about Fool's Paradise. Just walk with me. There's this song called Fool's Paradise by this R&B singer, Melissa Morgan. I want to say it was in the 80s. The song goes like this. I'm taking out this time to give you a piece of my mind. Who do you think you are? Well, maybe one day you'll be a star. But until then, baby, I'm the one who's crazy, 'cause that's the way you make me feel. I don't want no romance. I just want the chance to show you that I'm for real. I never said that I would be your everything, okay? But you know that I love you, baby. And it's going to be such a shame when you start living in a fool's paradise. You better think twice, because it's not very nice. The second verse. Bright lights in big cities don't go to my baby's head. You know I love you, baby, but you choose this life instead. So just remember what your mama told you before she sent you on your way. She told you never ever be too clever to not see your own mistakes. I'll be here waiting for you when you come off your trip. And I guess I will always be the one to bring you back from your busy fool's paradise. You better think twice, 'cause it's not very nice. She said it again. That's how the whole song is. Some people don't truly understand how much they live in a fool's paradise. They chose not to choose God's will. And while God allows free will, there's still a judgment that comes with not following his will. You understand? There are a lot of people that are quick to follow someone else's instructions, not knowing the fullness of God's power if they were to possess it with our mere human selves that can handle it, of course. We don't know how much we too can be able to utilize the power, so we're not denying it, okay, instead of just having a form of godliness. So we can avoid having a leadership or being a leader, okay, that exemplifies 2 Timothy 3 and 5, right? Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. And a lot of people might want to say, oh, I don't deny the power. I believe in men being able to perform miracle signs and wonders. I believe that's possible. They do this, they do that, blah, 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 blah. But the problem is, the Jesus in me is supposed to love the Jesus in you. The prophet in me should be subjected to the prophet in you, and the prophet in you should be subjected into the prophet in me. If that's not happening, there is a discord there. That's if there's actually prophets, in the same room, in the same proximity, things like that. Every person is not a prophet. But what I am going to say is this. There are a lot of people that do not truly understand what it's like to truly operate in the fullness of God's power. Of course, like I said before, as much as our human bodies can actually deal with it with our mere carnal human cells, right? Now, the reason why it's a great chance we can have a form of godliness is because we do not know how inaccurate we're utilizing the word, right? Sometimes we expect people to do certain things the Bible never said or even exemplified. I had a word with the Lord earlier. I talked to the Lord earlier. And because somebody told me that I should have a covering. And while I understand that, it makes a lot of sense. But it's very important that we are conscious of what type of covering we have. We can't just get any old type of covering all willy-nilly, right? Because we don't know who's actually cultivating us or who could be stifling our growth because they're really gatekeeping us. Does that make sense? Some people are threatened by what you have because they don't understand the weight that you carry. They don't understand the thing that you're impregnated with. They don't understand the burden that's bubbling in your gut, or they don't know how big that baby is. You understand what I'm saying? They don't know, okay, what it is you really toting spiritually. You understand? And even if they did know, some people like to play gatekeeper to make you second guess, pervert your gifts, be their spiritual clone, whatever the case is. And then now you don't get to walk in the fullness of what God made you or called you to become. Now you become somebody else's copy, spiritual Xerox, if you will, right? And that's not fair to you, because then your yes to God can end up being your no. Does that make sense? And so we got to be very careful about who covers us, right? Sometimes people are quicker to call people our spiritual mother, our spiritual father, things like that, because of a particular lifestyle that they exemplify only when they're in front of us, okay? But without a direct relationship with God, we would be fooled in believing that whatever life that they're exemplifying in front of us is a life that they're exemplifying when they get behind their own four walls, when they close their own doors and they get home and they in the comfort of their own homes. Does that make sense? And so sometimes when you don't have a relationship with God, you don't get those downloads. But I do, okay? Even though I don't come on here and say, well, such and such doing this, blah, 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 don't mean I don't know, right? I know. I just don't need to say it because it's unnecessary to say, you know? God allows us to have a particular calling or a particular gift because he trusts us to utilize it properly, right? He allows us to have a particular burden because he knows it's not more than we can bear. He knows how much we can bear, right? Because they don't have a relationship with God. They don't know how to cast their burdens onto him. They just don't know how to do it. And so they're quick to believe, yeah, sometimes God will put more on you than you can bear. Yeah, if you're foolish enough to believe that, yeah, absolutely, okay? Because you're not casting your burdens onto him, okay? You're leaning onto your own understanding. And you're not acknowledging him in all your ways. And you're not allowing him to direct your path. Okay? You're doing the very opposite of what the word is saying. There's nothing to worry about if something is already happening in your life. God already predestined to the end of his order how that thing will play out in your favor. You understand? The word says whatever the devil meant for evil, God will turn it out for our good. Evil devil, good God, my God. I asked God, I said, Lord, please help me find a part in the Bible where leaders in the Bible had a covering before and after they started their ministry. The Lord said, just start looking stuff up. I said, okay, cool. And don't forget what you already studied on. So I already started thinking about what I studied on before I started researching. I thought about what I studied on, and I started researching what I studied on, just to make sure I had the clairvoyance that I needed. Then I picked up on some other things, of course. Just brushed up on some things. So Saul, in the Old Testament, he was killing people for just proclaiming the name of God, right? He was a mass murderer, right? He just slayed people because they mentioned the name of God. He had a direct contact with the Spirit of the Lord, and it knocked him off his donkey. The Spirit of the Lord spoke to him, and he subjected himself under someone without a name, without followers, without influence, without attention, accolades, license, nothing. You understand? Saul subjected himself under that person, and that person taught Saul everything Saul needed to know so he could move forward into his ministry. And when Saul got transformed, okay, not just changed, transformed, big difference. He went from Saul to Paul, and he went forth. He went ye therefore and started his ministry. Majority of the New Testament, after all the Gospels have been given, was all about Paul and his teachings, right? getting all the churches and all the cities and all the countries, getting them straight, and getting them converted into Christianity, dropping the old covenant and picking up the new one, basically, right? King Solomon had David. Even though David was his servant, Solomon, some reason, somehow, was jealous of David. Eluded him twice. Practically used his head as a bullseye for target practice, if you will. Don't sound like a very good leader, but for some reason, he still was his leader. Later on down the line, David became King David. He no longer had a covering, so to speak. He no longer had a leader, so to speak. He was the leader. I'm just covering a few. There was Jesus' disciples. Jesus' disciples no longer had a covering once Jesus left. Their covering was the Comforter. And of course, we all know that's after the moment of Pentecost, when Jesus was lifted up in the cloud to be placed on the right hand of God, right? And then the Comforter came. And then when the Comforter came and imparted himself into all of the disciples, that's when they followed Jesus' instructions to spread the gospel in the innermost part of the earth. All right. And as they went on and spread the gospel, they touched and imparted the Holy Spirit onto them, hensing the beginning of Christianity. You understand? In the Old Testament, there were just Yahwists. There were no Christians. There were no Christians until the Holy Spirit came. Okay? You have to be Christ-like in order to be a Christian. But you can't be Christ-like without Holy Spirit. That's why Jesus had to leave and the Comforter had to come. That makes sense? And it had to be spread in the innermost part of the earth. And the gospel had to be spread around as well. Because you have to understand why you're imparting, why you're allowing the Spirit to impart into you. You have to also learn, right? So you got to have the Spirit and you got to have the knowledge. The Lord just gave me something earlier. Knowledge is education. Wisdom is the protection. Wisdom is the insurance. Wisdom is the safeguard. Do we understand? Wisdom is that umbrella of assurance that nothing is going to pierce past what you already have received your resolve in. Does that make sense? And so when you learn something and you apply what you learned, that experience and your practical application of what you learned become wisdom because of the experience. Some people are ignorant to the experience. And because they're ignorant to your experience, or they don't want to gain more wisdom or get wisdom of what they know because they haven't practiced it, they haven't applied it, now they don't have much experience. Now they don't want you to have the experience. And even though you may have the experience, they want to dismantle your experience. Because how dare you have more experience than me, even though you came here after me. But that would mean the word will make us a fool when it says that the first shall be last and the last shall be first. How dare the word make us look like a fool? You understand? But that's exactly what happens when you live in a fool's paradise. The word makes you look like a fool. How dare the word makes us look like a fool when it says, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall speak all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Okay, one of the Beatitudes, that's Matthew 5:11. And another Beatitude, Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. You know, the Beatitudes is becoming of an attitude that we ought to possess if we're going to truly operate in ministry and do it successfully, okay, and fulfill it. You understand? So a Beatitude is supposed to be Jesus's core crash course. Do you get that? Core crash course of Jesus's instructions and his lessons, his knowledge, his education, and his application, his wisdom that he has imparted, okay, as one of his first lessons on the mountain, right after he got done defeating the devil when he tempted him those 3 times, when he went into the wilderness those 40 days and 40 nights, right? I'm trying not to get too technical, but when we live in a foolish paradise, the word really has a way of making us look like a fool. We might have picked up the very thing that is embodied on the people that was talked about. 2 Timothy, 3rd chapter, 5th verse. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Or, in the New Testament, I don't remember what passage, but definitely says this. Those who have, more will be given in abundance. But those who have not, that which they do have, or even suppose they have, will be taken away. How dare the word make a fool of us? Sometimes tradition is dogmatic because it's not doctrine. We cannot try to twist the truth with our own reality because of how we chose to perceive things. I'll start with leading with our own flesh because we chose our own will. People have mentors, people have coverings, but only up until they start their ministry. What I'm trying to say is, if somebody started their ministry, they shouldn't have to worry about having a covering when God should be able to cover them, or else who is really giving you these downloads? Is it God because we're following his will, or is it us because we're following our own? We're leading with our own fleshes. We're leading with our own minds. You understand? We're allowing the devil to take us the way we want to take because we're leading with our fleshes, kind of like a baby that's leading with their flesh when they see a perk with a piece of candy in their hand. The hand is just stuck out of the van's door. Their face is a little bit blurry in the truck. And they're saying, come on, cat, you want some candy? Yeah, sure. Blah, 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 blah. Forgetting all about stranger danger. And before they know it, while they thinking they just going to get a piece of candy or a stick of gum or a lollipop, they sure to almost get snatched out the socket because they done got lured in by a perp. Now they're in this dark van being taken to some secluded area because they got fooled with a piece of candy because they got led with their flesh, even though they was taught, they was given the knowledge, but they didn't know how to safeguard themselves because they didn't know how to apply the wisdom to keep themselves protected. Does that make sense? So sometimes the word has a way of making a fool of us when we follow people that don't know how to do the right thing themselves. That's why they following someone. And then they're following. At what point do we go to God for ourselves? Because Yahweh's in the Bible, there was no middleman. Okay? There was just the Most High. There was no middleman. There was just the Most High. It was only him that we acknowledged. Okay? And then when Jesus came, there was no going to him except through Jesus Christ. Even Elisha, when Elijah died, Elijah gave Elisha, double of his portion. Elisha took those portions and did what he did with it. He didn't need any further covering. His spiritual father already left his earth. He didn't need to go and find another covering. You understand what I'm saying? That's why a lot of people, they keep switching up spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers because they're so hardwired into believing, well, I need somebody to cover me. I need somebody to cover me. They might have subjected themselves to a reprobate mind. They might have subjected themselves to a Leviathan spirit. They ain't really checked them out that well. We ain't check ourselves good enough yet. You know how much misery loves company. Whatever we choose, God allows us to choose that thing. Okay? If he shows us something different and he say, hey, go left, and we steady looking right like we saw a ghost over there, we just like, because every time anything that's godly or godlike, we act like we don't see it because it looks too spooky. It shows us to be, it leads us to be too accountable for things. Nobody wants to be told that they've been doing ministry for so long just to learn that they've been doing it so wrong. Nobody wants to be told that. But there's a great chance it's possible, Now I understand why Reverend Timothy Wright wrote the song he did. The song goes, where do you stand? Who's on the Lord's side? You on the Lord's side, or are you on the side with the Pharisees and the Sadducees? You understand? The example on how to reject a chosen one is exemplified in the New Testament. You understand? What God has for me is for me. So even though your enemies might come up against you, it may be delayed, but it's not going to be stopped. So keep pushing. What God has for you is for you. You knew without a doubt that the Lord would bring you out. You understand? Then you understand why Walter Hawkins made the song. He said, what is this that I feel deep inside me? It keeps setting my soul on fire. Whatever it is, it won't let me hold my peace. It makes me love on my enemies. It makes me love on my friends. And it won't let me be ashamed to tell the world that I've been born again. Right? It's stuff like that that make you second guess before you allow somebody to cover you, and how long you ought to allow them to cover you. Because what you don't know is you can have something figured out now, even with the help of your mentor or your covering. And later on, after you got their permission, you'll do that thing, fulfill that task, complete that mission. And later on, the Spirit of the Lord will still come straight directly to you and tell you, you did it wrong. You still missed it. You still missed the boat. You still didn't do it anchored in me. You still didn't consult with me. I still didn't give you the green light on that. I still didn't give you the okay. You understand what I'm saying? And before you know it, whatever book you wrote, whatever business proposal you drafted, whatever person you married, you ready to throw them over your right shoulder like you got some type of salt ritual to fulfill. Because all you had to do was go guide yourself. You understand? So be careful when you consult with someone that is covering you. Understand? Because just like you need a covering, they need a covering. And then they need a covering. At what point do we stop crying out for resource and go to the source? Stop doing this. Okay? The Old Testament were nothing but Yahwehs. Like I said, there were no middlemen. And in the New Testament, the only middleman was Jesus Christ. Even when there was a middleman, they never lasted. Okay? And if you've been hurt long enough, if you've been burdened long enough, you bear long enough. I think a lot of middlemen have taken up enough of your spaces. It's enough people that's had their hand in what God gave you. Start crying more so to the source and less to the resource. Okay? What you do first, okay, you cry out to the source, then you go to the resource to see if it adds up to the source. That's how you check and see if your spiritual leader is indeed supposed to be your spiritual leader. Once again, my name is Miss Awaken, and if we forget the acronym, it's ancestry, worth, acclimate, yield, kinship, I love you, and never judging. And as I always say, I hope that blesses you as much as pondering all of those things blesses me. I love every single one of you. God bless you, and God keep you.